A NASCAR career can be a game of chutes and ladders. A driver could have a quiet career and then get thrusted up into the spotlight. Sometimes, though, a driver's career is set back as even saying sorry would not fix the problem. Greg Sacks is a great example of how a career can have its ups and downs. After his win in the 1985 July Daytona race, Sacks did not find victory lane again in the Cup Series. By the mid-1990s, Sacks was jumping around from ride to ride to survive in the Cup Series. As like Sacks' career, the board game of Franchi had a journeyman story to itself. When you think of board games, the more popular games are Scrabble, Clue, or Monopoly. Franchi was trying to make its way to board game galore. Dubbed the Monopoly for the 21st century, Franchi was born out of a college assignment. Franchi was a game like Monopoly, except instead of properties, franchises were the main asset of the game. Franchi had its humble beginnings. A former Miss New Jersey swimsuit model and QVC model, Lauren Fosse pursued a marketing degree at Rowan University. While in college, Fosse came up with the idea of Franchise It. On the original design, fake franchises were on the board game like Happy Hamburger and The Gracious Inn. After graduating from college in 1988, Franchise It was a pipe dream for Fosse, who was looking for franchises. She worked as a sales director at NDE Environmental Corporation for 10 years. Fosse had hurdles to establish her game. In 1994, Fosse applied to cancel the registration of Franchise, which was held by Lauren Enterprises. LAF Enterprises established this case because Lauren Enterprises has, quote, abandoned the registered mark and, quote, impaired the use of the registration. The case was dismissed. Fosse continued to wheel and deal in trying to get companies to join her board game. While on a lunch break, Fosse would try to persuade franchises to be on her board game. A former Miss New Jersey swimsuit and QVC model, Lauren Fosse pursued a marketing degree at Rowan University. While in college, Fosse came up with the idea of Franchise It. On the original design, fake franchises were on the board game like Happy Hamburger and The Gracious Inn. After graduating from college in 1988, Franchise It was a pipe dream for Fosse, who was looking for franchises to be on the board game. She worked as a sales director at NDE Environmental Corporation for 10 years after she graduated. Fosse started LAF Enterprises during this time and had hurdles to establish her game. In 1994, Fosse applied to cancel the registration of Franchise, which was held by Lauren Enterprises. LAF Enterprises established this case because Lauren Enterprises has, quote, abandoned the registered mark and, quote, impaired the use of the registration. The case was dismissed by the courts. The other challenge was getting financial backing for the game. While on lunch break during her day job, Fosse would try to persuade other franchises to be on her board game. Fosse had her struggles trying to get companies to join. She justified herself saying, quote, that is a real business. I can't tell you how many times franchises have told me to get lost and never call them again. Over time, Fosse found a franchise one by one. Franchise secured 15 companies like 7-Eleven and Great Clips to be on the initial launch of Franchise It. In order to secure the rights of bigger companies, Fosse had to use the trademark without charge. Fosse was not making any money off the license, but trying to expose her board game off with name-recognized franchises. By 2000, Franchise It became the sole focus of Fosse as she quit her day job. On September 9, 2001, the New York Times ran an article highlighting Fosse's accomplishments, from her beauty pageants to marketing of Franchise It. During this time, Greg Sacks was looking for an opportunity to get back into NASCAR. Fosse and Sacks would form a partnership a year later. Sacks was trying to make a comeback into NASCAR. In 1988, while driving for Cale Yarborough's team, Sacks sustained injuries in a bad wreck in Texas, which sidelined him for the rest of the season. After recovering from his injuries, Sacks struggled to find rides in NASCAR. In 1999, he attempted 5 races in the Busch Series for the number 90 team of Frederick Maggio. Sacks made one of those races, which was at Charlotte, where he finished 34th. For the 2000 season, Sacks was competing for double duty for Petty Huggins Motorsports at Daytona in the number 84 car in the Busch Series and the number 96 in the Cup Series. During practice for the Daytona 500, Sacks was involved in a vicious wreck with Jeff Fuller. Sacks had to compete in an old Morgan McClure racing car to get into the Daytona 500. Sacks would finish 25th in his duel and not make the Great American Race. With dwindling opportunities, Sacks knew he had to make his own. With Sacks being in his late 40s, teams were looking to fill the seat with younger drivers like Ryan Newman and Jimmy Johnson. In 2001, Sacks competed in a one-race deal with an Ed Partridge-owned modified, but deals were not readily available for other opportunities. Sacks saw the opportunity with CARit and messaged Fosse online to form a partnership with a race team. Sacks was scheduled to start the new team at the 2002 Brickyard 400. Off the track, Sacks was promoting his new sponsorship at new events, trying to gain attention. After not being on the entry list for the Brickyard 400, the next races for the number 05 team would be the Falls Lowe's race and at Homestead. The team was slated to run 3 full seasons after the 2002 season. The sponsorship plan for Greg Sacks was straightforward. After the initial release of Franchi, Fosse would announce different special editions of the game. How would the companies be on the board game? Companies would have to sponsor the race team first for the company to be on the board game. After being pushed back from the initial plan to start in 2002, Franchi ran a promotion for fans to win pit passes for the 2003 Daytona 500 weekend. While the team did not materialize a Cup Series team for the Daytona 500, Sacks entered in the ARCA race with the Bobby Jones-owned car. Franchi was on the hood of the number 88 entry with the sweepstakes winner Aubrey Huffman as well. Sacks would start 30th and avoid the wrecks that sprinkled throughout the race with a 7th place finish. After the ARCA race at Daytona, Sacks ran 3 more ARCA races with Bobby Jones in the number 88 car with the best finish of 2nd place. Franchi was not on the car for any of those other races. While Sacks had some good runs in 2003, 2004 was the season for Sacks to come back to the Cup Series. Sacks would return to the Cup Series with Ed Raba and James Wilsberg for some races in 2004. In the number 13 car, Sacks would qualify for 3 of the 10 races he attempted and having a best finish of 41st. After failing to qualify for the 2005 Daytona 500 ship, the ownership of Raba, Wilsberg, and Sacks split, leaving Sacks being the full-time owner of his number 13 team and only qualifying for both Pocono races in 2005. 2005 would be Sacks' last Cup Series start. Sacks would venture into the world of vodka by founding GT Vodka, which sponsored Junior Motorsports cars in the early 2010s. Sacks raced one final time in 2010 for Junior Motorsports at the site which put him on the map, the July Daytona race. After starting in the top 10, Sacks would finish 21st in the debut of the nationwide COT car. While racing is a game within itself, sometimes chances do not work out. Chances, though, could lead to opportunities. Sacks provide that you can come back from the worst and still be successful. While the franchise team was a flop, Sacks created opportunities of his own. While the days of thunder roared in Sacks' past, the franchise board was an important step in Sacks' later career.